behalf of TRACI, that is Theological Research and Communication Institute, Delhi, we welcome you to this monthly reflection meeting that we hold every month, usually on the last Friday of the month, on which we pick up a topic of concern and interest to all of us, and then we invite a person who has expertise, experience in that particular field area, and that our can I request people to mute their mics, please, so that we can go ahead with our meeting. Yeah, so we usually have this kind of a discussion after the presentation of the person whom we have invited. We will make it open for you to be able to ask your questions, and our objective is that on these issues of common concern, we may be able to know and understand better, and also be informed about the various developments and dimensions of the issue, and also to look at how, as Christians, or how the church can respond to some of these issues. So that is our idea, that we as Christians can some way respond and engage, and that is one of the vision of TRACI, which was started or founded in the year 1975. This is our Jubilee year, and we are very glad today that some of the people who have been associated with TRACI from those time, from the 70s, like our resource persons for today, Robin Thomson, and some of you were able to see Dave Andrews. These were the people who were in Delhi in the 70s and early 80s, and it was so good to see them. And I will introduce to you Robin in a while. So this is briefly about TRACI and also this monthly reflection meeting. And for today's topic, as you would have read in the flyer, it is responding to dementia. Now, some of us may be familiar with the term. For many of us, it may be a new term. And some of you might have questions about, in the flyer, we shared with you about the name of the book that Robin has written. It's called Living with Alzheimer's. So one of the very basic question for a person who has not been informed about these may ask, what is the connection between dementia, you are saying, and then book says living with Alzheimer's, how they are connected? So all those kind of questions, we hope today's Robin session will be able to bring to us more clarity. And I would like to introduce Brother Robin Thomson. Robin had been in India from, I think, late 60s and early 70s. Yeah, late 60s, as he was teaching in Hindustan Bible Institute in Chennai. So he is a Bible teacher. Later on, he also taught at Union Biblical Seminary in Pune. And he had been associated with the work of Interserve for about 20 years. He, along with his wife Shoko, who comes from Japan, they got married in India, in Chennai. That is an interesting thing. And then for working in India at that time, he was also associated in these early years of the work with TRACI. So we are so glad to have him. Later on, they moved back to UK, where he works, and he has been involved in various works of God's kingdom through South Asia Concern and School of Bible Teaching and other ministries, but primarily through Interserve. And we are so glad and privileged to have you, Robin. We had a in-person session with Robin on the 20th. That was also attended by quite a many people, and it was a very enriching session for all of us. But we thought that as many of us are not all live in Delhi, so we thought that we will make use of this platform of reflection meeting to invite him again, so that those outside of Delhi can also attend and learn on this topic. So without taking much time, I will just let you know that in this format, we have requested Robin to make a presentation, which he will do for about 45 minutes. And after that, we will make the floor open for your questions, because we know a lot of questions will be there in your mind to know more, because this is an area where we haven't heard much, though these terms we might be hearing, but this is a good time to learn, as many of our family members or relatives or friends we know might be affected or might be experiencing, just as you met Dave Andrews. So Dave Andrews and Angie had been working in India for many years, and now we came to know that Angie, his wife, is also experiencing part, and also would have shared, but now because of some immediate need, he had to go and log off. But we hope, if possible, whether he will join. But this is how we mean that this is something that it touches our lives in some way or other, and we would like to learn from Robin. So Robin is also the author of this book called Living with Alzheimer's, and I just finished reading that book, and he has written it in a very lucid style, in a very simple language, and everyone can enjoy reading, because it is sharing his story, his life's experiences. And if you are interested,
cemetery, Daryl took the arrangements.
Can you please mute your mics? Yeah. And this book, Living with Alzheimer's, a love story. So Robin has authored this book, and if you would be interested, the copies are available here in India too. You can also find it in Amazon. But if you want from an Indian publishing, Good Word Publications, you can get. So those who are interested, you can ask us it at TRACI, and we will help you how you can get that book. But otherwise, from Amazon also you can get it. So with these words, I would like to now welcome Robin. And I forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Raaj Mondol. I live in Delhi, and I work with TRACI. Yeah, Robin, you are please welcome.
Thank you very much, Raj and Satish, and it's great to be with you tonight. And being in Delhi again reminds you of back in the those days when TRACI was beginning, and my wife and I were here in Delhi. So it's a great privilege. And as I look at the names, I know some of you, the name looks familiar, the face looks familiar, but it's great to see you. And we had just a few minutes ago Dave Andrews, whom some of us know, who has his wife Ange is living with dementia, and so he had to leave because he's looking after her. Raj talked about the purpose of these sessions, to know how, as a church, we can respond to issues that face us. And I guess my aim tonight is to help us to. The question for us is, how can we learn to respond with love and understanding in order to relate better to people living with dementia and to support their caregivers? And I'm just going to share the screen now. Oops. Sorry. Oh, here we are. Sorry. I've called this "What I Wish I Had Known Sooner and Done Better," because there are many things that, as I looked after my wife, Shoko, as I'll tell you in a few minutes, many things that I wish I had done better, and things that we just didn't know at the time, but we did what we could. And that's the case for most people when they start off being closely affected by dementia. And I guess most of us here tonight have been affected in different ways. We may be caring for somebody living with dementia, or we may be related to, or we have cared. And I wonder, when you were first affected by dementia in all these many ways, I wonder how you felt. India nobody knows the exact statistics, but there are supposed to be at least 8 or 9 million people over the age of 65 who are living with some kind of dementia. I'm sure the figure is much higher. Last week, when I arrived, I heard about a film, Van Vas, which is about a gentleman who, apparently a very capable and able person, who then was affected by dementia. And in the end, his family took him to Varanasi and, in a sense, let him go into the situation of Van Vas, that stage of his life. Somebody else told us that when people are seemingly affected by dementia, people just say, Badam khao, eat more almonds, that'll help you to get better. And I think the most common response everywhere to dementia is fear. We're afraid, how's it going to affect me or my loved ones? And incomprehension, we don't understand it. And as a result, that leads us to not getting involved and not realizing how we could respond positively, because there are so many things that we can do, even though we think we can't. So I hope that tonight sharing our experience will be helpful, and learning, as Raj said, some facts about dementia, and also how our faith can impact our understanding and practice. Let me share a little bit. Oh, what's happened here? Sorry, why is it not going down?
Just click on that screen again and then go to the next
Click
slide.
where?
Click on top of that screen, just
Where it is?
on the slide,
Yeah.
and then see if you can.
Thank you. Oh, you're very good. Expert. I know these things always fool me. So when my wife, Shoko, some of you may know her, we were in India for about 20 years. And when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 13 years ago, we had no clue about what lay ahead. It started about a year earlier, perhaps around March 2011. And I became aware that she had sort of lost her edge. And by October that year, I could see that something had happened. She was repeating questions and comments and forgetting what she had just said. And we went to consulted our doctor, who referred us to a consultant, did various tests, and the doctor said, looks like Alzheimer's disease. And a few weeks later, that was confirmed by a scan and further tests in January 2012. So Alzheimer's, what did that mean? We were not quite sure. In fact, we knew very little. And as Raj said, many of us know, well, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? People talk about dementia, not what is the connection? So dementia is an umbrella word. It covers many different kinds of dementia, which we'll share in a second. It's a syndrome of a cognitive and progressive nature with deterioration in cognitive function, like the ability to process thought beyond what might be expected from normal aging. All of us, as we get older, we lose our cognitive ability. We forget names, we forget things. It happens to all of us. This is something that's much more than would be normal. It is a disease that affects people, usually older people, but not always. And it affects many aspects of memory, thinking, orientation, let's see here, language, judgment, and sometimes affected by deterioration in emotional control, social behavior, and so on. There are different kinds of here is some of the main ones are listed here, but there are actually 40, 50, maybe more different types. But the main one is Alzheimer's disease on the right, then vascular dementia, then Lewy body, frontotemporal, and then diseases like motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's can also lead to their own kinds of dementia. The most common is Alzheimer's, as I said, about 60%. Certainly it would be Alzheimer's. Then there's dementia that follows a major stroke or several minor strokes, vascular dementia, maybe about 20%. Then Lewy body dementia often leads to visual hallucinations and other things. And often people who have Parkinson's related dementia is very similar to Lewy body dementia. One of my very good friends who died from Parkinson's about 2 years ago used to have hallucinations from time. He'd be perfectly normal much of the time, but then he would have these hallucinations. Frontotemporal dementia is another variant, which often affects younger people and often leads to sometimes bizarre behavior and loss of social awareness. And then, as we mentioned, linked to Parkinson's disease, motor neuron disease, and multiple sclerosis. And there are many more variations on this because the brain is so wonderfully complex that when it's affected in many different ways, which have much in common, but also each one is different. We can think of stages of dementia, the early, middle, and later stages, but there are no fixed boundaries, and people can progress in very different ways. But it helps us to think that there are stages and to start looking ahead. And the effects of dementia are multiple. Here are some of these listed here. We'll come back to this a little bit later. So this is a very brief introduction to dementia, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. And we were gradually learning some of these facts and figures. We knew pretty well nothing to start with. Really, we knew my father had memory problems, but that was 20 years earlier, very different situation. So we knew pretty well nothing, but we learned as we went along. And we didn't think that Shoko would get better, but we didn't know how it would progress. We weren't in denial. We weren't, as some people deny that there was nothing wrong with me, but we're probably a bit numb, and we just hope for the best. And looking back, I wish we could have had somebody to guide us and talk things through at that time. Somebody said, this is what's happening, this is how it'll go, and take us through. And I think if we'd had somebody like that, we perhaps could have done things differently, including talking more to each other about our situation. We didn't talk very much about it. To this day, I don't know how much Shoko realized of what was happening to her. So if you're affected by dementia, I hope that you have people you can talk to and consult. It's very important that we talk to each other because we can help each other a lot in this way. Well, after the diagnosis, the first year, life carried on much as normal. Shoko could still manage day-to-day activities, looking after the house, cooking, sewing, writing letters, cycling here and there, looking after our granddaughter. But she lacked an overall framework. What day of the week is it today? Well, if I said Sunday or Monday, she knew what activities would be connected with that, but she could never remember, for example, that on Monday night was the night we would put out the rubbish. She always wanted to do it on Saturday night. And I found this irritating. I thought, why can't she remember? Same time, I realized that what an extraordinary thing memory is. When you start the morning not knowing what day it is, not remembering what happened yesterday, not quite sure what happens next. Each day is a succession of new experiences. Well, Shoko's memory wasn't very good. It didn't seem to be getting worse, but something else was happening. She began to be convinced that things were missing from the house. Again and again, she would count cushions in the sitting room, mugs hanging in the kitchen, plates in the cupboard. We had to make lists of everything. We had to move things and hide them so nobody would take them. And she was sure that somebody was taking things. And we even wanted to call the police. It became very difficult. And I didn't understand what was happening. I knew something was wrong. And I tried to reason with her about things that were missing. She thought were missing. No, it's not missing, it's there. Don't worry, the house is locked, everything is safe. I tried to reason with her. She wasn't convinced. And I didn't connect this strange behavior with Alzheimer's, because I thought that was probably about memory loss. I kept on reasoning, which had no effect and became more and more difficult. We argued, but actually, it's not just about memory. Different parts of the brain can be affected, resulting in changes to different areas of life. It's the cognitive, difficulty with memory, losing things, putting things in odd places to keep them safe. Cognitive aspects are affected, but there's also emotional effects, becoming agitated about small things, becoming suspicious or paranoid, which was happening to her. Getting impatient, for example, waiting in line. She became very impatient to wait in the supermarket. And then functional effects, unable to plan, losing skills like sewing or cooking. So any kind of dementia affects people in different ways. And I didn't realize this. So when she was behaving in a strange way, I was just irritated. And in fact, I was really troubled. I wish I had understood better what was happening. I wish I'd known more. And over the next 4 years, there was a steady progression of losing things, not from our house, but from our life. Traveling was difficult. I had to make sure to keep my eyes on her. She'd get lost. Cooking became difficult. For example, measuring to make a cake, she lost that capacity. So I measured the things and then she could finish making the cake. Sewing, which she was so good at. One day she just looked at her sewing machine and said, "How does this work?" And I didn't know. So she never opened the sewing machine again. Or planning meals when guests came, you have to plan, and she couldn't do that. So I took over that function. So we didn't realize it, but we were going through some of these stages of dementia, from very mild to moderate, and so on and so on. And as I said earlier, these stages are different at different times. And it's quite difficult to manage as people progress in different ways. And I wish I'd been much better at letting Shoko do things. I wish I'd been better at letting her help do things in the kitchen. I was very nervous, not being very good at kitchen work, and I would get very tense, and she would come and switch on the stove or switch it off, and I'd say, "Better stay out of the kitchen, stay out of the kitchen." I wish I had been better at helping her to do things, because it's very important that people should be able to do what they can. And by the end of 2016, after 5 years, things changed quite sharply, and she was no longer able to initiate her own activities or plan. She couldn't finish things on her own. She stopped playing the piano, was confused about sometimes who was in the house. So when our adult children came to visit, which was wonderful, she loved to see them, but was a little bit puzzled. Come down and see somebody in the dining room. Who's that? And confused. And she couldn't manage her daily life. She needed me to be with her, and she was very dependent on me. And soon she had difficulty going to bed and settling to sleep. And suddenly, Alzheimer's had really begun to bite. And when that happened, I felt really afraid and helpless. And some days I literally didn't want to get out of bed. I was just lying there. And I was reminded at this time of one of the truths of the gospel, which is that we have a Father in heaven who's both loving and powerful. And I just clung on to that very, as you say, by my fingernails. I was struggling to keep remembering that and to keep on. And our children noticed the change when they came to visit. And as we were grappling with our situation, we found ourselves asking, is this the same person? What has happened to her? Is she the same? And about this time, somebody lent us a book by John Zysor, I'm Still Here. And this is such a great book for us to read. And he explained that Alzheimer's is a terminal illness. It's not going to get better. We can't cure it, but we can treat it. Not necessarily with medication, though there is medication that can help to slow the progress. Still no cure. There are new medications coming, but each one has its own particular issues. So there's definitely no cure. Some medications do help, but we can treat it by the way we relate and help to improve the quality of a person's life. This was the key then, the words on the screen. The person with Alzheimer's is still a person with whom we can relate, though it is a different relationship. It's the same person, but it's not the same person. And we need to understand this change. We can't go back to the old relationship, but we can build a new relationship. And these ideas came to us like a revelation. They fitted our experience exactly. Because our daughter wrote on one of her visits, "Oh, I feel so sad. My mother isn't who she used to be." And we wanted to go back to the old relationship, but we knew it wouldn't happen. But now we realized we could choose to build a new relationship, or we could choose not to. Another book makes the same point in a different way. This is a very helpful book. And he says, when it comes to communication, you must remember the person with dementia cannot change the way they are. It follows, therefore, that you are the one who has to change. And the italics are there in his italics. And it's so important. We who are caring, we're the ones who need to change and to adjust, because the person living with dementia doesn't have that capacity. Very simple, but very important. But also, we need to remember that the person living with dementia may not be able to change, but she's still a person, and we can still relate to her. About 25 or 30 years ago now, Dr. Tom Kitwood introduced the concept, or reintroduced, of person-centered care. He found that dementia doesn't progress in a linear fashion. It varies from person to person. And one of the most important factors is the quality of care and relationships. So he asked the question, what do people with dementia need? And the answer is love, with, as it were, 5 flower petals around it, the comfort, identity, and so on. And essentially, person-centered care is the principle of truly loving and caring for it's for anybody. And these are the main needs of the person with dementia. They need to feel attachment, often feeling in a strange place. They need to have a sense of belonging, sense of comfort, sense of identity, being occupied. And the caregivers are the ones who can help the person with dementia to maintain their identity. And of course, these things are true for all of us, but they're especially for the one with dementia may not be able to adjust as we can. And I learned 2 important lessons about communication. The first one, so important, don't argue. Don't argue. When we had endless arguments, when we were worried about things missing, we had to lock cupboards, and we would argue, well, where do we keep the keys, and how do we lock the door, and do we do this? We had endless arguments, complete waste of time. And Zeisel says, don't say don't. Instead, distract and divert. Don't disagree. Distract and divert. The person living with dementia is on a fixed course, and you can't change that. But distraction and diversion do work, just as they do with small children. Well, that was easy to understand, much harder to implement. My default response would be don't. I had to have things organized and under control. I had to learn how to distract and find new ways of redirecting Shoko's impulses. And I really wish I'd been better at that. I really look back, wish I could have done better. Distracting was helpful. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's have something to eat. Let's go out in the car. We could do things like that, and it really was effective. And I remember one time when Shoko didn't recognize me. One evening, she wasn't very happy because she thought I was pressing her to go to bed. I think that was the reason. But she said to me very crossly, "I'll tell my husband when he comes home." I was so shocked. "I'm your husband," I said. "I am your husband." "No," she said, "you're not my husband," quite scornfully. I was dismayed. I tried to persuade her. Look, I'm Robin. I'm your husband. Look at me. Look at my clothes. Of course I'm your husband. She wasn't convinced. I didn't know what to do. It's the moment I'd been dreading. She doesn't know me anymore. And then I remember the advice, don't disagree, instead distract and divert. So I went downstairs, opened the front door, came in, closed the door quite loudly, and I called out, hello, darling, here I am. She came to the top of the stairs. Oh, where have you been? She said. I was looking for you. I was so relieved. She knew who I was. And it didn't always work. There were a couple of other times when she didn't recognize me, but none quite so confused as that one. But we don't argue. We distract and divert. We have to enter their world, not feel there to be part of our world. We have to enter their world. Another piece of advice, your body language is more important than what you say. And my daughter told me this many times, long before I understood it for myself. Because in communication, words are only a small part of our communication. The way we talk is more important, and even most important are our gestures, our posture, our facial expression. And it was so true. If the tone of my voice was impatient, or if I hustled her to sit down or get up, let's go out, let's be in, and she found it distressing. Why are you so cross with me? She said. I wasn't cross, but it came across like that to her. But if I spoke softly, if I held out a hand of encouragement, she just gave me such a rewarding smile, much more than I deserved. So body language is so important. Maintaining that loving relationship. There's no technique for that. It's our friendliness and our warmth. At the same time, on the other side of the story, the emotional life continued because the part of the brain that handles our emotions is often not affected in the same way. While thinking may be confused, feelings are strong. And Shoko's affection was very strong. We could see it, for example, in relationship with children. When we went to the supermarket, she would see small children, she'd start singing to them. Parents were a bit confused, but the children loved it. But when our grandchildren came, she loved children. And to me also, she showed so much affection. When I would go out and I would come back, the carer would be there, I would come back, and she would often stretch out her arms. Oh, I love you so much. I love you so much. Such a wonderful privilege to have that relationship. So in summary, how do we respond to the person living with dementia? Love and respect are the key. She is still a person. He's still a person. Relationship is vital. We have to enter their world. Dave Andrews, who had to leave us earlier, his wife Ange has been living with dementia for many years. And I think she's very confused. And he wrote about their experience. And he shared the advice that somebody gave him for his situation. He said, there's just one thing you have to do each day. Ask yourself, how can I show my love? And then do it. Ask yourself, how can I show my love? And then do it for that day. What wonderful advice to show love and respect. But then this reminds us of the challenges of caregiving and the huge responsibility that caregivers have. Caregivers are usually the family or close friends. And somebody said that the caregivers are the keepers of dignity and personhood for the person living with dementia. It's a huge responsibility. And, there are millions of people in India who are caring for somebody, their family or close friends, who is living with some kind of dementia. And they do it with love. They want to do it, but they need support so they can continue to love and care. Another book that we found very helpful was this book by John Dunlop, Finding Grace in the Face of Dementia. And the Dunlop is a doctor, geriatric physician, but also he cared for his own parents. So it's a very wise and very practical and warm-hearted book. And in his book, he lists the challenges that caregivers can face. These are things that the caregiver could face from the person living with dementia. It could be showing anger or a lack of appreciation, unpredictable, loss of inhibition, slowness, accusation, sleep difficulties, and so on and so on. Now, let me just say at this point that people often say, well, oh, people with dementia become aggressive and they get angry. That does happen. It doesn't always happen. And often, if it does happen, we shouldn't take it personally. But secondly, we have to know, why is this happening? Why is he agitated? Maybe he's not sure what's coming next. He's feeling uncertain. We have to understand that. He's in a new place. Why is somebody apathetic? Well, maybe they need to be stimulated. Just to say that these things are real, they're things that happen, but we need to understand them. But for the caregiver has to deal with these things. And some of them are not a big deal, but some of them, when they all come together, the effect is draining. And I think a word that sums it up to me is relentless. It's relentless. And as a result, the caregivers, I think tiredness can be the most common effect on the caregiver. Worry, how do we plan ahead for social needs, financial needs, dealing with the social care system, feeling alone, different emotions, spiritually affected. I always am encouraged by Psalm 44, where the psalmist says, wake up, God. Wake up, God. You could see he's feeling so discouraged. And he says, God, you must be sleeping. Of course, God is not sleeping, but that just reminds us. And so these are some of the effects that can happen to caregivers. And Dunlop in his book makes the point that this is a calling. To be a caregiver is a calling that we accept. We're called to serve. And we think of the example of Jesus serving people and loving people. We're called to love and to serve. And I found that helpful, that even though I didn't like what was happening, it was a calling, and I was in some very small way following Jesus. And I remember that I wanted the situation to change. I was praying, Lord, please change the situation. Please change her. Please, stop this situation. But I was challenged that I need to pray, not change her, not change the situation, but Lord, change me. And I remember very vividly a time when I was challenged by this, and it was a transforming prayer for me for a number of reasons. Lord, change me. But I think the question now for us is, how do we support the caregivers? Here are these caregivers going through these challenges. How do we support them? And I think that for us, whoever we are, and for our church, we'll talk about the churches a bit more in a minute or two. But for all of us, this is the question: how do we support the caregivers? I think for caregivers, some advice generally for caregivers that they need to plan ahead. They need to discover what resources are available, and that varies so much in different countries. I don't know much about what's available here in India. Very important for caregivers to build their own support team and also to meet their own needs. You have to look after yourself. Take each day as it comes. So there are various things that caregivers need to do, and we could spell those out, but I just give them in summary. And it's very important to realize that as we think about caregiving and the challenges that lie ahead, it's not a question of if the challenges come, it's just when will they come? They will come. It's not an if, but it's when. And so it's very important, I mentioned earlier, build your support team. Caring for somebody living with dementia, any kind of dementia, is challenging. And we can't do it by ourselves. We need support, whether it's from family or friends. We need that support. We need professional support from the doctors, from the professional, maybe carers who come to help us, carers who we pay to come and help us, social workers. So we need professional support and you could say the informal family support. And I like this quote, sharing the care is not failure to care. If we have other people helping us, that doesn't mean we've failed. It's just the right thing to do. And another piece of advice, start planning before you actually need it, so that you're ready for any eventuality. When things are going maybe not so badly, we need to be thinking ahead as, how do I plan for the next step? How do I plan for the next step? And so these are things that caregivers need to do. Let's think that, what can churches offer? I think this is a very important question for us. And I think there are many things, but there are two very important things that churches can offer. First of all, churches can give continuity of relationships. You know, professionals come and go, the doctor, the social worker, the nurse, organizations that we may call upon, not always accessible, but church members are there. And we've known each other for a long time. So we can offer to listen, to share, to be with people. And this is so important when people are going through a hard time and not quite sure what's happening next. We have that continuity. And then we're a community of love and spiritual power. And so we can pray. We can offer our time. We can listen. We can share. We can be with people. And I think this is very important because dementia is not, it's not curable. It is progressing in a degenerative way. But as we pray, we can help people and we can ask God to help people and to intervene and in a way to heal them. I think that's a big question and I won't try to go into it now, but we need to be praying for healing in every way for the person living with dementia and for the caregivers. And we can, here are some simple ways in which we can do this. First, to see who are the caregivers. We may not know that somebody is caring for their elderly parents. People don't like to talk about it necessarily. We need to look out who are the people who are caregivers in our church. We need to be able to listen to them, hear their story, be able to talk to them about what they're going through. And of course, that means we need to try and understand what they are going through. So what I've been sharing this evening might have been new to some of you, might be very familiar to others, but that's the reality. And if we understand that, then we can listen to their story. Pray, as I mentioned earlier. We can enable people and include them. We shouldn't say that, oh, so-and-so has dementia, she can't do anything more. She can. She could still welcome people. She could still serve tea or coffee, whatever it might. There are things that we need to keep on including people. And then there are practical ways in which we can support people. And there are many, of course, that we could do. So we need to proactively, as churches, see how can we support and encourage people, the ones who are living with dementia, and almost more importantly, I would say for us, the caregivers, how can we support them? Let me just conclude with a few simple ways in which the gospel can keep us going. Some very simple truths. And I've mentioned this already. We have a Heavenly Father who is both loving and powerful. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but it's true. And that is so important. That's such a wonderful foundation for us. We are persons made in God's image. Even when the person we love is losing his cognitive ability, can't do the things that he used to do before, doesn't seem to be the same person as before. Maybe they even reach a stage where they can't talk to us. They're still a person. They're still made in God's image. We can still relate to them. And that's wonderfully true, even when we can't see it in kind of everyday terms, but it's true. We believe it. And then when we suffer, God is with us. Well, suffering is a huge topic, and I won't even attempt to talk about it much, but we ask the question, why? But a more important question may be who? Who is with us when we suffer? Who is with us? And the Bible tells us all the time that God is with us. Jesus is with us. He's gone through all that we're going through, and he's with us. And we have hope because our relationship with God continues. It's not just this life, but as we have hope, we look ahead, and that's so powerful and so important. And then lastly, we're part of a community of love, friendship, and support. And that's, again, such a wonderful support for us. So the gospel has so much to tell us and so much that can empower us and support us. Let me conclude with a couple of words for all of us. Don't be afraid. Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia can be fearsome and mysterious, but we learn not to be afraid. The persons affected are still persons, and we go on relating with love and attention. So don't be afraid. And do be intentional. Let's not hold back and say, well, I'm not sure what to do. Let's start proactively, reach out and offer the support and the love and the care that God gives to us. I'm going to close there, Raj, and over to you. And if we can have time for questions, comments, the floor is open.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Robin. I'm sure all of us who are here in this platform attending, it has been very, very insightful, very helpful. And as Florence has written in the chat box, very practical tips given with much gentle voice and kind advice born out of your own experience. And as in the topic we had written, had we known earlier and done better. So I was just thinking for our family as well, just last month, in the month of February, as we started to see in my mother's life that how she was showing these signs of dementia that we were not able to read earlier or see or understand. And suddenly, as she met with an accident in fracturing her femur bone, and when she was hospitalized for surgery, and then suddenly we were awakened to this kind of a reality, which was, as you said, when you saw in the life of your wife, Shoko, and it is very difficult when it is happening, when it starts to show. And as you shared, it was not many at that time, you were not able to get much information. We are so thankful to you that whatever experience you have gained, you are sharing with people. And I'm sure many in this meeting today would have this as a very, very helpful advice, because this is something on which we don't know much. We have not been informed. And we want to thank you, especially the way in which you brought us towards the end with a message of hope that comes from the gospel, and also how church as a community of love and support can engage and respond. So without taking much time, I would like to now open the floor for questions from the participants. You can either write in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand through the expressions that are available, and then we will let you ask your questions directly by unmuting yourself. So one question that in the chat box that Bubbly has written, and maybe we can start with that. She says, can it be prevented?
That's a good question. I think for all of us, we can take steps to preserve our health. So things that we do for good health, whether it's for our heart or are important. So our diet, exercise, good nutrition, good sleep, avoiding stress, social relationships, relating to people. These are all important things for all of us, and they definitely can help us. There's no way we can say, well, if I do this, I won't get dementia. Not like that. But these things are very helpful for all of us, and yeah, well, that's all I can say really. So it can't be prevented. People still are affected by dementia, but we can take these steps. I think social interaction is very important. If people are left on their own, that can be very negative.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. A related question, once we come to know that a person is having dementia, can its progress be restrained? Are there some ways in which the further deterioration can in some way be checked or restrained?
Well, I think the two answers. One is that there is medication. I don't remember the exact name of but it's quite commonly known. So if we go to our doctor, for example, I think it's important, if you feel that somebody is showing signs of dementia, whatever it may be, to talk to your doctor and to get a diagnosis. Now, diagnosis is not it's not always 100% clear, but that's very helpful. And then your doctor, I see Dr. Sharma is nodding, so I think, am I right? Is that right? Is it Dr. Sharma that's here? Dr. Sharma Chatterjee? No, sorry, I'm thinking of somebody else. Anyway, I think it's very important to consult your doctor, and then there is medication that can help to slow the progress for some people. And for example, my wife Shoko, she started taking those tablets, but she found she became very restless and gave her very vivid dreams, and it didn't help her. So the doctor said, okay, it doesn't help you, don't take it. But for some people, it does help. And the new medications are available these days. I say available, you can get it in America, I'm not sure, not in Britain, but they have side effects, and they're only for people in a very early stage. So medication can help. I think what we all have to do is to go on relating with love, understanding, not arguing, not getting impatient, all those things that are so difficult for us to do, but are so important, because that keeps the person happy and contented. And my sister, my older sister, has what's called mild cognitive impairment. It's a sort of early stage, if you like. And I think it's very important for me to keep on relating to her with love and warmth and friendliness and attention. And she is, in that sense, she gets confused, she gets lost easily, but otherwise she's coping very well. And we as a family have to keep on showing love, attention, care, all the things that I mentioned, and not arguing, not getting impatient, not if they seem to be repeating, don't get irritated. So all these things are so helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. There is a question by Stanley. Is dementia a hereditary disease?
There are certain genes that some people have, which can be not a cause, but can move towards it, but it's quite rare. So the answer is it's not hereditary in the sense that you're likely to catch it from somebody, but for some people, there are certain genes that do transmit. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a doctor here in those attending? Someone said about like some question was asked. So if there is a doctor and
Yes.
you would like to give a perspective, it would be good. You are welcome.
Yes, I'm not a doctor.
Is Mohan Abram doctor? Is it Mohan Abram doctor? Mohan Abram?
Well, there are different kinds of doctors, aren't there? Some who practice and some who just preach. No.
Okay, so if there is a doctor, they can share their perspective. Meanwhile, you are welcome to ask your questions. Yes, this is your time to raise your queries. Or any other experiences you want to share,
Yes.
observation, yeah, something you are yourself experienced or struggling in caring for a person with dementia. So you're welcome to share. Yes, Bubbly, you want to share?
Yes, I like to share my experience with my father. In his last days, he was affected with dementia, and it was really very tough for us to handle. He was only recognizing my mother, and he became a little baby. Just so it was really very tough for us. So, handling with him the things that I have. I'm not saying this should be, but as Dr. Rabin has said, like that, mind exercise is a kind of prevention. If our mind is functioning, means keeping it active more. Then, if someone loses thinking and talking, then I think it affects much. So that is a kind of prevention. As he said, it cannot be prevented. That's what I have learned, and thank you for confirming about it. But think is that it can be a helpful tips to keep the mind engaged.
Yes, that's very important. Things that keep our minds engaged, and doing things with people are important too.
Yeah, thanks, Bubbly, for sharing that. And I think that is very, very true. Like as I was also reading, so I find out that is very important for our mind to be kept active. And therefore, they suggest there are a lot of such mind games, puzzles, crossword, all those kind of things to continue doing, keeping your mind engaged and active. Not only mind, but I think all of our body, we are a integral person the way God created. So as long as we should keep ourselves active in all domains, possible as much possible, because we also recognize that my mother also had been a very active person, a very social person, but in the last 1 or 2 years, because of like she also had fall, and we recognize that led to some restriction on her movement, and she was confined to the home. And now as we are looking back, we are thinking perhaps that would have contributed in this kind of condition that she's finding herself now. So I think I just want to affirm what Bubbly is saying. Perhaps that is something which all of us can try to do as much as possible to keep ourselves active. Because in our Indian society, what happens once you retire, after that age number becomes very important. Like once you hit 60 or 70. So my mother also, she celebrated her 80th birthday. And I think that okay, I have now hit 80. Sometime in our society, that makes a lot of impact. And I think in compared to the Western society, I see there that age is not such a big that number, it's just a number. But that in our Indian society is a very important factor that plays. So I think these are some things also perhaps you can discuss more. Stanley has raised his hand. Yes.
Yes, Brother Raj, you really said it well. Age is only a number. My question is forgetfulness or absence of mind, is it beginning of dementia? Like, for example, sometimes I forget my car keys, or suppose I'm just starting to write an email, and then suddenly some other thing comes in, then I forget that what I was supposed to write. So is it a part of the beginning of the end, or I mean, how do you?
It happens to all of us. I don't think so. Losing your car keys is that's fine, but if you can't think, what are these car keys for? That's different. If you look at the car keys in your hand and say, what are these for? I don't know what, then that's something different. So these things like forgetfulness happen to all of us, some more than others. They're not necessarily signs of dementia. It's more than that.
Thank you.
So don't worry.
Very good.
Okay,
I'm satisfied.
Good.
Yeah, Bubbly, you have a question?
No, I just want to join how, because my mom has handled my father, so she has noticed something and how she is coping with herself. I just want to share. Maybe it is a helpful tips for all of us. She is now 87 and she stays alone, but she is very active on her smartphone, and she plays game, and not only she is confined to the game, but she calls relatives by herself. She calls her great someone like that. She has a very great network, and even if she is staying alone, she has information of everybody, and she remembers everybody's birthdays. Something I have inherited from her, I can think about, I consider in that way. So I think as Robinson has said that social contact is really helpful. So she knows who is doing what, and she follows it up. So that is also really good to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks.
That's
Yeah,
a really
Robin,
good
please.
example. Exactly.
Yeah, so remaining socially active, and that keeps your mind also active. I think that is what you are sharing, and that is so important.
No, because we are just see.
Yeah, there is a
But
question Bonnie has written.
Not,
Bonnie, you want to ask?
I have
Okay, Shikha, ask.
no written that same question.
Okay. So the question is, where should the initial tests be done? Is it necessary to know which state the person is in?
Stage.
Which stage? Okay, different stages of dementia you mentioned, Robin.
Yeah.
So could you answer that?
So where's the initial? I think it's your whoever's your doctor, wherever you go to for your normal healthcare would be the starting point. In England, we have what's called our GP, general practitioner. We start there, and then they may then refer you to somebody who is a memory consultant. There are doctors who specialize in this area, and there are certain tests that they can do. Again, some people continue to be able to do very good with crosswords and things for a long time, but there are the tests that can be done, which will then you get a score which they can indicate the situation. And as I mentioned, the stages are there's no kind of exact. It's a very indefinite stages of progression, so it's very difficult to pin things down. But it's to go to your doctor and then be referred to a specialist who then conducts tests and will be able to give advice. What is this? They can do a scan, brain scan, and that can also be helpful. That can help too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Yes. So yeah, which stage? I think the question of which stage is not important. Not important. Yeah.
Yeah, Robin has shared the phone number of Good Word Communication Services, so you
Yes,
can note it down, where you can get this book, Living with Alzheimer's, authored by Robin, and it is available at around 500 rupees.
500, yeah. It costs, Amazon have it, India, but it's more expensive on Amazon, so this is better deal, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it is published in UK, so the price I
Yes.
see is about £9, so that will
Yes,
be
yes.
quite a lot. But you can order it from Good Word Communication Services, which is based in Delhi, and you can note down the number, and they can let you know what may be the postage charges, etc. Yeah.
Raj Bhaiya, Isaac wanted to share something.
Yes, Isaac, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Raj Bhaiya, and thank you, Robin, for this very informative session. Personally, we were able to identify with most of the things you were sharing because my mom is a dementia patient, and we don't know in what stage, maybe in the last, because she is completely immobile and bedridden for last more than 4 years. No communication, no speaking, no smiling. So that's her stage. But even prior to that, some of the things we only wish what you have titled. If you had known some of these things earlier, it would have been really better. For especially, my dad was taking care of her in the initial years. Now he's no more. He has struggled a lot. Sometimes it's really painful. Some of the situations, it's really painful, and sometimes we feel so miserable and helpless to face such situations in real life. But thank you so much. But what we need is more of education. Education, even among Christians, about this dementia and Alzheimer's, and especially how to take care and some of these things. So I was very much concerned about this evening session, but I'm discouraged. I'm thankful to God for people who have joined. Maybe at least maybe in our own families or relatives, maybe someone is there suffering with this issue. But when there is an exponential growth, especially it is predicted that as years go by, the number of Alzheimer's dementia patients is going to rise so exponentially. What could be the cause? We don't know. What is the cause for that? But that's one question I'm asking. What is the cause for that? Why it's so much of like it's increasing? Secondly, how we can the church response, even poor response, even to the seminar. The church is not really interested in some of these things. Church in general, I'm saying. So that's really, it pains me because although some are here, but I thought maybe so many people, because it's a big issue all over the world. It's a big issue. And in India, also, it's even we face so many real life issues, but somehow people are not very much keen to learn and reflect and to think, especially from a Christian perspective and a biblical perspective.
Yeah, I think that it's very moving to hear your story and how your mother's situation now, and you go on loving her and caring for her, even though she can't respond or doesn't seem to respond, but we know that she's still there. And
one thing I'm really challenged by your sharing is that she's still a person, and she's still in the image of God. She's an image bearer. So that has
so
come really powerfully to me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank God. That's right. I think there's a question here, Raj. Somebody's asked.
Yeah. I'll just read. I'll read
please.
that. That is very, I think, very important one. It's related to what Isaac asked also. This is written by Tim Singh, and he says, "Thank you very much, Robin, for an informative, honest, and heartfelt presentation. I would like to request you to share more on how the church was helpful to you in your journey, and maybe how it was not. There are many issues that demand the attention of the church, and dementia probably will not feature high on the list of priorities. So how can we sensitize more people and help the church to engage more deeply on a practical level with those going through dementia and their caregivers? I ask this understanding the busyness of life today is at insane heights, and very few, if at all, have time for something as time-consuming as dementia. Appears it is coming out of an experience of struggle. And Robin, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. First, how our church was helpful. I think what we found was that, well, first, how was it not helpful? I think many people didn't realize what was going on, and so they didn't they would not have been able to, as it were, help us proactively. But what we found was that people were still very warm and welcoming. When we went to church on Sunday morning, Shoko loved to go there, and people were smiling and welcoming and warm. That was so valuable. Our pastor, some of you might know, Robin Weeks was our pastor at that time. He was great because he understood that I needed somebody to talk to as I was looking after my wife, and at the time when it was very difficult. And so he invited me to come, and every 3 weeks I would spend an hour with him. He would just listen to whatever I was talking about and the issues I was facing. He never criticized me. He asked me sometimes searching questions, and he would ask me how I was doing, my health, and so on, and point out helpful. So he gave time and listened to me. That was so important. And that was a great ministry of our church. And then there were a couple of people in our church who were friends, and they came to visit. So they gave their time. So I think that's the way our church was helpful in that regard. Not everybody, but I think why people, I wouldn't say there was nobody who was not helpful, but a lot of people did not understand. And that would be the same case in many of our churches today. We don't understand, we don't have time, and so we don't get involved. Yeah, how can we sensitize more people and help the church to engage more deeply? Well, I think, as Isaac said, education is important. We need to educate people. We need to talk. Those of us who are facing these challenges need to be willing to share our story with other people and help them to understand. We can learn. I won't say read my book. That's not what I'm trying to say. But we can read things like that, or we can get information that will help us. And I think, yes, churches are facing many challenges, many challenges. But at the same time, ultimately, church is a community of people who love each other and care for each other. And so we have to learn how to do that at every level, whether it's for the small children or the young adults or the singles or the drug addicts or whatever, or the older people or the ones with dementia. We have to be showing love and care for each other. And well, there's no limit to how much love we have. It's not that if I love this person, I can't love that person. So I fully understand that churches are busy, but we have to recognize that here is a need that is increasing, and we need to be, help each other to understand. I think understanding is very important.
Yeah. Thanks, Robin, for your response. I think one of the questions that Isaac had asked also was why we see such an exponential increase in the numbers. So
I was just going to well, I mean, nobody knows the answer. I'm sure one of the factors, well, one is people are living longer. So as we live longer, we're more liable to have dementia. Secondly, were people more aware of this? I think in the old days, somebody got older and they would become forgetful and confused. We just say, oh, she's old, he's old, and we just keep them at home and we wouldn't think about it. Now we're much more aware. And there are also younger people who are facing dementia perhaps in their 50s or under 65, and that's very challenging. Still a minority, but a significant minority. I think part of the reason must be the way we live these days, our diet, the pollution that's in our atmosphere, the things all around us that we're eating, the stressful life we live, the fast, all these things, the chemicals around us, all these things must be having an effect, but it's difficult to categorize in exact detail.
Yeah, thanks. But I think that one definitely we can be connecting it is like now people are living longer years.
Yes.
So the average lifespan across the globe has increased, and therefore and with regards to the other observation you made, earlier times, like in Hindi, some will be familiar. When people get older, there's a satya gaya. So that is the term under which you put everything, whatever behavior, or in English, perhaps they use the word it's turned senile or whatever.
Yes.
So that was the approach. but now as we understand better, then we are also asking. So Stanley, I see you have raised your question.
This is for Dr. Robin. Now, we're talking about statistics. Now, during this course of about 1 hour, I was observing that, it is the wives or the mothers who are suffering from dementia, that including my mother also. Now, is the dementia more common in male or females?
I think it is more common with women. I don't have exact statistics, but it is probably more common.
Any
And I don't know
reason,
why that is.
Any reason? Is it because they live longer than men?
That could be one factor, but I don't know. But it is more common with women, but I don't know how much more common. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question for especially gender perspective to explore.
Yes.
Because how the men remaining active even in late years, whereas for women that process of getting inactive or withdrawn, especially given the social context in which we live. So these are issues perhaps to explore further before. So some researches needs to be done. I see some more observations. So Bubbly has written, maybe her observation, maybe one should not sleep extra, which means more than normal sleeping hours. Long sleeping time can slow down the mind. My father's starting point was that he slept a lot because he didn't know what to do. Maybe learning to engage inside the house also is important. What would you say to that, Robin?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't comment about sleep. Sleep is good. We should have, we should, many people don't have enough sleep. But I think the point, he didn't know what to do. Maybe learning to engage, that's very important. If we need to help them to have activities that will keep them occupied and active rather than just sitting and then therefore sleeping. We need to help each member of our family to engage with activities and the things that will, yes, engage them and keep them mind and body active, for sure.
Yeah, thanks. So Robin, there is one little personal question. I don't know how you take it. That Satish has written. Robin, I am not sure how much it would pain you, even as wished that she spent time in conversation with you, means referring to Shoko. How has life been after? We are blessed by your teaching, though it can bring back painful memories. Would you like to comment?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that comment. I think for me, yeah, it was a very hard time, as I shared, and I was also greatly helped by family, friends, and as I mentioned, our pastor and others who helped me so much. I think that in my case, I talked to somebody last week who was saying that after his spouse, his wife, I think it was, or I think it was his wife who died, he wanted to forget about what had happened. And I fully understand that. He didn't want to go back. For me, I felt at the time that I thought I really want to communicate to other people what is happening in some way, if I can help. And so actually, I remember talking to my son while Shoko was still alive. I said, I really want to write something about this. And we talked about it. So I was able to do that. And, I was able to write the book which I've written. And also I'm involved with different groups that help support people. We have a monthly online dementia support group, which different people share in that. So I think I feel that I've been able to respond in a very, I say, positive way. God has helped me, not that anything that I've done, but I've been privileged to be able to do that, and it has been a great help. And I think that some of you have shared about how you are, Stanley and Isaac, and I think Florence shared in the chat about her parents. And so I think if you've been through that and can share with other people, it's great. It's really helpful, and we can do that, and we appreciate that. So I think all of you have shared tonight, and some have not shared anything, but you are going through hard times, but we have to help each other. And I think communication is very important. I was in a workshop, and a couple who were not old, they're in their probably 50s, and they said, the lady said, I have dementia, I'm living with dementia, and we talk about it together, and they were actively communicating with each other in a way which is quite unusual. And I was very blessed by that. But I think we have to learn how to communicate more. Of course, yes. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, so I think I will like to make one observation. It's very important, especially in our country, especially we see with any kind of a sickness or illness related to the mind or mental illness, what we associate, and even this Alzheimer's or dementia, there is some form of social stigma attached.
Yes.
And therefore, we don't talk much, we don't share, we don't want to tell others if somebody is going through experiencing. And that is very, very important to break the silence. And we really appreciate what you are doing to share. You're not only sharing, but you have written, and therefore making the story known to others, so that those who are struggling, those who want to know, that they can overcome those inhibitions, those fears or stigma of the mind, so that can be broken. So I think that's very, very important what you're sharing. And we also appreciate the people who have shared here in this platform, and how we can be that community to be open to share, and how our churches can become safe places where this sharing can take place. I think that's very, very important. We are recognizing that need. There are a couple of other questions too, which I think very important. I like to read.
I just comment. But in London, I met somebody she's from the Sikh community, and she was saying how in her community, this is in England, when people were living with dementia, the community just didn't want to talk about it. They just kept it very closed, and as you said, there was a stigma. So that was that community. People say that, here's a question from Lydia, people with dementia is a spiritual attack. Is there any truth to that? I would say no. Of course, we can experience spiritual attack in many ways, but dementia is an illness. So like any illness, it has a physical, social, psychological dimensions. It's an illness, and I don't think we should think of it as a spiritual attack. That isn't to say that there isn't a spiritual dimension. There is, but it's an illness, and we need to respond to it as an illness and pray as we pray for any person who is sick, but not consider it as a spiritual attack.
So there is another question saying, is abusive behavior and using foul language by a dementia patient common?
It happens. I wouldn't say it's common. It does happen, and people respond in different ways. Some people who've been very mild and quiet people suddenly become loud, and it's certain kinds of dementia, particularly I think the frontotemporal, it can be a symptom and an effect. So as I think I said at the beginning, some people do become aggressive, and they will use language that would not be their normal thing to do, and that is part of the disease. Others don't, and when it does happen, we should not take it personally. That's easy to say, hard to do, but also we should understand what is causing them to feel like that. Why are they agitated? Why are they feeling insecure? Maybe they're feeling anxious or whatever it might be. So so it happens to some people, but not everybody.
Okay, thanks. One comment by Anne. At the rate at which this disease is affecting people, I feel sensitizing our young people, teenagers and youth by schools, Sunday schools, taking them to centers where such people are looked after, for example, would be a good start for creating awareness.
Yeah, that's great. And I think teaching young people is important. And I think children can have for older people to have young people coming, it's very valuable. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, Tim has written one more comment. Thank you, Robin, for sharing. I'm glad to know Robin Weeks was your pastor. He was ours too, and had been a great listener for us too. We are grateful for the people who have been sensitive over the years. Even when people don't know what to do, it's very helpful when they try and keep trying to reach out. One thing that has really helped us is when people listen to us and have come forward to help, but they are very few. So our prayer is that more will engage in the church for the needs of various people.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, we need to be proactive. We need to know who are the people in our church who are affected by dementia, who are the caregivers. And if we don't notice that, people don't like to say, oh, I'm a caregiver. We should be proactive to find out who they are and then be proactive in relating to them. I remember once, and it works both ways, because I remember once I was coming into church and somebody said, oh, how are you? And I just said, I'm fine. As we do, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. I was just responding automatically. And then afterwards I thought, actually, he was really asking that question. He was wanting to know, how are you? Because he knew my situation. So I went to him after and said, oh, Phil, I'm really sorry. I just answered automatically. Actually, thank you very much for asking me. And we had a very good talk. So we need to learn how to, as you said earlier, how to talk to each other about these things proactively and take the initiative.
Thank you. So our time is actually come to an end, but there are two comments I would like to refer to. I think Stanley had asked whether the PowerPoint will be available, and then Bubbly is now asked whether recording will be available. So I think if not the PowerPoint, we will be providing notes. I had requested Robin to share with us our notes, and that when it will be available, we will be able to share with you. So you can inbox us at TRACI, whatever, from where you got information, and we will be able to share. And we will also be able to share the video recording. So all these reflection videos are available at the TRACI website and links. So that will be available to in a few days time. So that we want to share with you. Varghese Abraham says, how do you differentiate between caregiver and caretaker? Greatly blessed to be on this platform and learn how to be supportive of those suffering with dementia. A lot of invaluable insights. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, just quickly, if you can respond that question.
A caregiver is a word we use for people who are like family members, anybody who is caring for somebody in a personal capacity. There are professional carers. We wouldn't call them caretakers, but a carer. The professional people who are paid to come and spend time with. Then, like, they're not nursing, but they're coming to spend time with people. So we don't call them a carer as a professional person, but caregiver is usually referring to the family and friends who are looking after and supporting somebody with dementia.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we don't want to hold up beyond the scheduled time. So we will put this meeting to a close officially. I will request Brother Isaac to close this meeting in prayer. But those of you who are interested with you have some more questions, I am sure Robin will be happy to stay few minutes beyond the time. So you can still ask. But we will make the meeting, we will end the meeting with the prayer. And then those who want interested, you can continue to stay and we will be available along with Robin.